Hello, Dustin.
Hello, Hooper.
Why the long face?
I don't know. We're at a crossroads here.
Yeah, movies are weird. Movies can be weird sometimes. Is that? Oh, we got the flashing red lights. Oh, flashpoints.
Or should we do yellow flashing like it's lightning?
Oh, I suppose we could do any of the blue. We could do the blue lightning. That's in this movie, right?
Oh yeah, we could do the blue lightning. Yep.
All right. Oh boy. Okay. Can you run real strange?
Yes, there's a lot of that in this movie.
They don't fix that.
There is one point where I've never had much of a problem with it. Obviously I think it's weird, but it's whatever.
You know, I'm incensed by it.
You hate it. There's one scene in particular in this movie. I audibly laughed in the theater because it's so bad. He's literally almost doing like an airplane. It is terrible. But yeah, he's like flinging his arms and running like crazy. I don't understand
that at all.
I don't either. Do you not have a coach on site? On set that's helping him with this?
I would appreciate a video essayist on YouTube to do some work into this. If not, I might have to step in because I need to know what went behind this choice. I don't know if it's just, I don't know if it's like a chicken or the egg. Does Ezra Miller, does he have poor form and they justified it after the fact? Or did someone say, we need it to look like you're sort of flinging the speed force in front of you to enable the running? But
I don't think they put that much thought into it.
You know what I mean? That's the only reasonable explanation. It's like, there's no way a human being grew up running like that because it doesn't make ergonomic sense.
I think Ezra Miller does run that way, and everybody else, nobody else thought about it. They were just like, okay, fine.
Could we pull up some street camera of Ezra Miller fleeing the scene of one of their various crimes?
I read something recently. I don't know if this was true, but I read something recently that said Ezra Miller was unaware when he took the role initially that they'd have to do any actual running. They thought it would all be CG. And I'm like, replacement. Well, you're wrong. What if it turned out that it was all CG and the animators were making this weird choice?
It's just some weird, the character model's messed up.
Yep. It's just rigged weird. And
to fire that rigging, those rigging people.
Yeah.
You're just sitting in there at the screen. You're like, well, this looks terrible. Is this a joke?
Barry's arm is clipping through that building.
His arm is clipping through his other arm. All right, we're talking about the Flash, everybody.
We're talking about the Flash.
Oh my God! Flash!
Hi.
I love you.
Thank you.
Passing you into Mr. Wayne.
No, please don't.
I need you here now, Barry.
So you're saying you could travel back in time?
But Bruce, I can fix things. I can save people. I can save my mom. I can save your parents.
You could also destroy everything.
I love you, Mom. I love you too.
So how was it this week? How's school?
School was good. Oh, this is mad trippy. Dude, this is catastrophic.
This world must die.
I'm not gonna lose her again. It's not Clark.
My name is Kara. I will help you.
Interesting group. Want some help?
Wait, he's Batman?
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Oh, this rips!
mandatory. Batman, what do we do?
We try not to die.
So The Flash, obviously out in theaters now.
Yeah.
This is the last DCEU film, and obviously stars Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, Michael Keaton as Bruce Wayne Batman, Sasha Calle as Supergirl, and other people. Other people. Michael Shannon's back as General Zod. And okay. But you better like Ezra Miller, because you're going to get a lot of Ezra Miller in this movie.
Well, and we've also got, just to mention the writer real quick, we got Christina Hodgson writing the screenplay, who we've recently praised for, wait a minute, sorry, I thought that said Prey, which we liked. That says Birds of Prey.
Birds of Prey we did not like. No. I think, didn't she write Bumblebee?
She wrote Bumblebee.
Okay, Bumblebee was good.
Solid, yeah.
Bumblebee is solid.
Yeah.
So the Flash is, this is the quick synopsis. After the events of whatever the last DCEU film is, Barry Allen is working with Bruce Wayne, Batman Ben Affleck, as sort of, just a key member of the Justice League and doing little tasks, but feels as if he could be doing more. And meanwhile, his father is having one last sort of trial where they're hoping to present new evidence to get him off of his life sentence, and where he's serving life sentence for the murder of Barry's mother, which he did not commit. And
what's his name back as his dad?
No, Billy Crudup does not return as Henry Allen. He was good. I like him.
I really like Billy Crudup.
I do too. But this guy does fine. You hardly ever see them together, so it's hard to get a feel for their chemistry. But yeah, so Barry is, trying to free his father. And one night, after being particularly triggered by the memory of his mother's death, he begins to run, and he runs so fast that he breaks the space-time continuum and finds a way to reverse time. Now the idea occurs to him that he could run back in time to the night of his mother's murder and prevent it from happening. Mm-hmm. Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck, tries to dissuade him of this and says, you don't want to mess with the time stream, but Barry has to do it anyway. And so Barry does. He finds a way that maybe he can, produce as small of a little change as possible into the timeline to prevent his mother's death. And so he does, but in so doing, it opens himself up into a lot of other problems. Namely, he ends up back in time on the night that he received his powers, mm-hmm. and meets, while his mother's alive now, he meets his self from that timeline and has to go on an adventure with his other self. So if you like one Ezra Miller, himself. Right, exactly. If you like one Ezra Miller, let's hope you like two. So in the process, they'll meet other multiversal heroes, and it's a thing. I did not like this movie. I know that a lot of people are saying it's good. It's pretty good, whatever. And obviously there's a lot of things, beforehand. Tom Cruise was like, he praised the movie, and Stephen King praised the movie, and James Gunn says it's one of the best superhero movies ever made. And
James Gunn, an employee of DC.
Right. Yeah. We heard all of this over and over and over. My expectations were still really low, and they were still not met.
They were just trying to flood the news cycle, because the only other news regarding this film was Ezra Miller's legal problems. Crimes.
Yep. The crimes of Grindelwald.
I was trying to be diplomatic, but you're right. Crimes.
Crime.
Assaults.
Yes.
PP crimes.
So yeah, I mean, look, I've made no secret of the fact that I don't care for Ezra Miller as Barry Allen. I don't think that that's a good casting choice. I think in Zack Snyder's Justice League, it worked just about as well as it ever was going to. But it's not my preferred take on this character. And it's interesting because I haven't watched the Flash TV series in a long time. But I thought that initially about Grant Gustin, and then really grew to love Grant Gustin. And I think he's great in the role, but Ezra never displays really any quality of Barry Allen. And I don't know if that's all on Ezra because it's also on the screenplay.
Yeah.
But this is basically a completely new hero. This is not Barry Allen. It's Barry Allen in name only. And that bothers me. Additionally, in the opening sequence, we see Ben Affleck as Batman. I think Ben Affleck has never been worse as Batman than he is in this film. And again, not his fault. This is the screenplay. The screenplay, I'm not going to give anything away. I'm not going to give anything away, but there is a moment where Ben Affleck is playing a very not Batman moment.
Okay.
And it is not good. Again, not on him. Ben Affleck's a great actor.
Can I also dilute the writing responsibility real quick?
Sure.
Christina Hodgson has screenplay credit, but there is story by credit by 3 other writers.
Yes.
John Francis Daly being one of them, Jonathan Michael Goldstein.
That's Daly's writing partner.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, they wrote Spider-Man Homecoming together, Horrible Bosses, Game Night, Dungeons and Dragons. So like,
yep.
The point I'm trying to make is not that, hey, they're bad too. The point I'm making is this is one of those scripts that has gone through multiple rewrites. And so you therefore have to credit a whole posse of writers because they've all written enough of a percentage of the script to be credited and paid for it. And it sounds like it's obvious even before you reach the credits that this script has passed through many hands.
Yes. It lacks a very clear vision. It's trying really hard to be comedic, but also really trying hard to be very emotional and being very cool and very like edgy. And it's trying a lot of things and not really succeeding at much of any of them. I didn't really think any of this was particularly funny. I didn't really think any of this was particularly engaging. A lot has been said about the visual effects in this film. The visual effects are among the worst visual effects I've ever seen on the big screen, which is a shame because the film certainly had enough money and certainly had enough time to make something that looked good. But they, didn't. Since then, the director has come out and said that was an intentional choice, that because we're viewing these things through Barry's perspective in the Speed Force, that things would look different. Without spoiling anything, I can see a couple of moments in the film where that might make sense. Might. But it does not excuse a lot of the other things. The opening sequence is this big show of Barry's speed, and it does not look good. Like, it does not look good at all. And so I don't understand why the sudden, like, terrible CG in a franchise that, like, no one's ever talked about the DCEU's visual effects because we have so many other things to talk about. It's like no one ever stopped to say, like, well, the visual effects aren't good in Justice League, because they're always good. Like, they've always been fine. So, but then, like, this shows up and it's like made for TV. It's really bad. And you can forgive a certain level of that if the story's really good, but it's not engaging to me. Again, I've listened to a lot of reviews of people who really like this movie, and I don't fault them at all. Right. Like they can totally like this movie and relate to this more than I did. But for me, somebody who at least I feel like I know the Barry Allen character a little bit. This didn't feel like Barry Allen. This didn't feel like The Flash. This didn't wow. It's really easy, I think, to wow me with speedster scenes. Sure. Make me feel like, oh, that's really cool. I love it. This never had that moment, save for maybe one moment right at the beginning, which was kind of unique and cool. But everything else was just kind of like, okay. I don't want to spoil anything, but there are obviously multiversal cameos. A lot of that has been,
let's spoil. I want to know stuff. And I think people know that you don't recommend seeing the film, but
I don't recommend seeing the film for a lot of reasons. I think if you're super duper, super interested, maybe there's a case where watch it when it comes on Max, but as of right now, don't go out and see this movie.
Well,
there's no reason to.
And we'll speak to why there's definitely no reason to on Max. As we go. By the time I release this will have been out for a few weeks. Yeah. And we can say now as we record it that the film is a flop. It has not made back anywhere close to the money it needed to make to be considered a success. And that is both, that might be an intentional and just sort of logical turn of events for this film for many reasons. But I am curious what you thought of all the multiversal characters. How are the Batman? How's the Michael Keaton stuff? How's Supergirl?
Yeah. So we're in spoilers now. Yeah. So if you haven't seen the film and you do want to, be preserved in some way, you can shut this off and come back to it. But otherwise, Michael Keaton. So it's important to note Michael Keaton is playing Batman here, but he is not playing the same version that he played before. So this is not a sequel to Batman Returns. This is him playing yet another Batman in the multiverse. Mm-hmm. There's no indication that anything that he'd ever interacted with Jack Nicholson's Joker or Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. There's no indication of that. And in fact, the presence of Michael Shannon in Michael Keaton's universe and Sasha Callier in his universe leads me to believe it is not Tim Burton's universe, period.
Right.
So yes, that's one thing to note. I did not expect that. I thought we were going into Batman 89's continuity.
So the Zod, Zod is in his universe, is in Keaton's?
Is in Michael Keaton's universe.
So why does Zod look the same, but Batman doesn't look the same?
Multiverse.
Okay.
Multiverse. So the way that this is explained is when Barry goes back in time and stops his mother's murder, in this version of time travel, you don't just create a parallel, branched timeline, starting at that nexus point where you made that alteration. Instead, it's like an entire new timeline appears and they intersect at that moment. So you changing something in, 1992 may very well trickle butterfly effect forward and backward. Because it's now a completely new thing. So,
but that doesn't.
So that explains why.
What the fuck? Like that.
That explains why it's not like Barry changes something in time and now he's just in a new world where Ben Affleck is doing something different. He's got a new Batman that predates the change he would have made with his mother.
Okay.
Right? Because obviously Michael Keaton's older than the murder of Barry's mother. So it's not like a timeline and then a new branch opens. It's a timeline that is completely new with some overlapping moments.
In other words, we need to justify changing actors.
Correct. So some of the overlapping moments would be
Michael Keaton. The overlapping.
Some of the overlapping moments would be that Barry gets powers in both worlds.
Yeah.
So
he looks like himself.
Yeah. So alternate Barry is in Michael Keaton's universe.
Okay.
or timeline. They say multiverse, but really this doesn't feel like the multiverse. This feels like alternate timelines.
Yeah.
That's a different thing altogether. He's not traveling to different worlds like you would, like even in DC Comics, like you would expect a completely different world. This is just a different timeline that's been altered forwards and backwards. But not backwards enough that things are weird, like backwards enough that dinosaurs are still alive, or you know what I mean? Like it's not whatever.
Yeah, we have to stay under budget.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so yes. Having said that, though, Michael Keaton falls back into the role. He does a really great job. He is playing Batman the same way he played Batman. Just, you know, note for the future, when you watch this, if you watch this, it is not that timeline. It's not that world. There's no continuation from Batman Returns. Like, what have you been doing over the last?
Right.
None of that. It's just, this is a new Batman who just happens to look like Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And Sasha Calle is Supergirl, Kara Zor-El. They go to find Superman. They want So there's a weird retcon here where evidently the day that Barry receives his powers is maybe like a day or two, it's unclear, before Zod attacked Metropolis. And the retcon is, well, that in and of itself, but two, that Barry was in Metropolis during the events of Man of Steel and tried to save people with his newfound abilities and failed.
Okay.
So that's why when he goes to the new timeline and meets his younger self and says, "You're going to get powers tonight," he takes him, like, you have to sit here. The lightning's going to come through. It's going to strike you right here at this precise time, and you will receive your powers. Done. Great. Done. And then like a day later, Michael Shannon's like taking over the world.
Yeah.
And he says, okay, well, we've got to go find the Justice League. I need to go find Wonder Woman. And they're like, oh, well, Wonder Woman doesn't exist in this world. Okay. The Amazons don't exist. Okay. Well, what about Aquaman? And he calls like Arthur Curry's dad, Boba Fett. And he's like, yo,
is your son a fish man?
Yeah, he's like, I need to talk to Arthur, and he's like, there's no one Arthur here other than my dog is named Arthur.
I never had a son.
Yeah, and there's like some joke where he's like, oh, but isn't your wife like the Queen of Atlantis or whatever? And it like cuts to his wife, and she's just like this, you know, old ugly like woman,
regular person,
cat lady, whatever it is.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh, very funny. Okay, and anyway. So Aquaman doesn't exist. Cyborg is not Cyborg. He's just Victor Stone. They don't show him because I'm not going to open that can of worms.
Come on.
They're not about to open that can of worms. I'm surprised they even mention him.
Seriously.
And then they're like, okay, well, we have to go find Superman. And they're like, oh yeah. Well, we don't know where he is. You know, we can't find anything in Kansas about a, you know, whatever. And so they're like, well, let's go find Batman. So they go find Batman. It's Michael Keaton, and Michael Keaton has a backdoor into NASA. Okay. And so they're able to find out, a ship did land on the day that Clark would have landed, but it landed in Soviet Russia, and we need to go get Supergirl out of prison. And so it's Supergirl and not Superman. Kal-El's ship was destroyed and her ship lived, and
it's Red Sun, but they basically destroy his ship before he can even emerge.
Correct. So it's her instead, but it's not her in that she's like loyal to the Soviets. Yeah. It's her in that she's been mistreated by them. So she gets out and lays waste to everybody.
Okay.
And so she then she's like, well, I'm going to go help Zod because he's a Kryptonian and I trust him and I don't trust humans. And then she goes and sees Zod killing people. So she's like, oh, actually, yeah, I'm going to go back. And so she goes back. He's like, hey, Barry, I'll help you. Sasha Calle does she does a really good job. Okay. Unfortunately, she has about 6 lines in the whole movie and she's really not in it very much. But she does a really good job with what she has.
That's good.
It's just not enough. And then as far as the other like multiversal cameos go, toward the end of the film, the timeline's multiverse is collapsing in and on itself. And it's like big orbs of other timelines. They call them other Earths or whatever, but they're not. They're not. And these orbs come in, and like I guess Barry can see them. I don't know. Maybe the audience can and Barry can't. I don't know. But we look into them, and like the first one we see is George Reeves as Superman in black and white, and he's like, "Man, Superman," and he doesn't say anything. He's just a CG George Reeves looking at Barry. Then they cut to a CG Adam West looking at Barry. And then they cut to a CG Christopher Reeve Superman looking at Barry.
Oh.
And Henry and Helen Slater looking at Barry as Supergirl. And they just cut to these people looking at Barry, but they don't do anything. They just stand there and like watch as Barry runs. But they don't say anything, and they don't interact with anybody. They don't even leave their orb. They're just like, I guess they can see out of their orb into Barry's timeline.
They think they're just watching TV.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And then the big cameo that everybody's talking about, I guess is Christopher Reeve, but secondly, it's Nicolas Cage plays Superman finally. And so they shot a scene from Kevin Smith's script of like the big giant spider and Nicolas Cage fighting him. And then de-aged Nicolas Cage, CG Nicolas Cage turns around. Cause see, they can actually get him. Everyone else is dead. But they can actually get him. Although I take that back, they did get Helen Slater. But everybody else is dead. So Nicolas Cage like looks out of his orb at Barry, but doesn't say anything. Doesn't interact with anybody. He just looks. And
come on.
And that's it. And so I'm like,
what are we doing?
So it's a little bit unfortunate that this came out so close to Across the Spider-Verse, which utilizes the multiverse in a very interesting way, where it's like T-Rex Spider-Man. This Spider-Man's in a Western and he's on a horse. This Spider-Man's literally a car. And like this Spider-Man's live action Donald Glover. And it's like interesting things. Mm-hmm. It's not just like, here's a CG Christopher Reeve. And I'm like, you could have just used a shot of Christopher Reeve from his movie and like archival footage. There's a novel idea. It would look real because it is real. It was shot really and not like this CG monster of Christopher Reeve. And, but regardless, it doesn't matter because they don't interact with Barry. They have no entanglement with the plot whatsoever, other than they're there, and I guess Barry can see them and they can see Barry, and that's it. And that's it. Like that, there's no reason for it to exist. They could simply have said the timeline is collapsing in on itself. The multiverse is collapsing in on itself. Okay, I get it. You don't have to show me any of it. You know, like I get it. Show me the worlds like starting to move towards one another and phasing with one another, but you don't have to show me who's on the world. I don't need to see that, especially if it's not real. If it's just CG Christopher Reeve, I don't care. Now, if you were actually able to get Christopher Reeve back, I want to see it.
Sure.
Because that's a miracle, but you weren't. So no, it's outlandish. It makes no sense. It's stupid. It's frivolous. It's eye candy, nostalgia bait, whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't do anything for the story. The story progresses to eventually Barry realizes that he has to undo what he did. He has to let go of his mother and essentially cause her murder. Like he has to not cause it. He has to allow it. And so he does, and that's great. And he's learned his lesson that, you can't tamper with the timeline.
Yeah.
Great.
You need to accept things.
Except he gets a wild idea that he could help his father get out of prison. And so he alters the timeline, goes back home, everything's back to normal, and his father gets exonerated and everything's great. And you're like, wait, but he didn't learn his lesson.
Right.
The whole lesson of the movie was you can't tamper with the time stream. You have to let it go.
I accept that my mother is dead, but I don't accept that my father is wrongfully incarcerated.
Right. The smart thing to do would be Barry receives some information from seeing the past and goes to the present with that information and is able to exonerate his father, not by
cheating,
altering the timeline. Like his father still did all that jail time, which is still the case. But you know what I mean? Like he was able to prove his father's innocence by allowing his father to be seen on a security camera at the time of the murder. So he couldn't have been at home because he's visible on a security camera. And so by allowing that to happen, he has altered the timeline. And so you think like, oh, the film's not ever going to address this. The movie's almost over. And his father's exonerated. The judge says, "You're free to go, sir." And everyone's, yay. And Barry comes out of the courthouse and Bruce calls him and is like, "Barry, we have a situation," or whatever it is. I don't know what he's calling him for. He's like, Bruce, I changed things, but I changed it back. And when am I going to see you or something like that? And Bruce is like, "I'm driving up now." And Bruce's car comes up and Barry like goes over to the car and the car door opens and dag flabbit, it's George Clooney. And so George Clooney is now Batman in Ezra Miller's universe. And the film ends. So there are ramifications to Barry altering. The film acknowledges you shouldn't tamper with the time stream, the timeline. Then he does. Then there are more changes. And then the film just ends as if it's over. But it isn't, because Barry now has to say like, oh, what else has changed? And then he goes to Google, I suppose, and would find out that like ketchup doesn't exist. And the color blue is actually purple now. And like things are weird. Like the dodo bird is still running around and it's an apex predator. And like, you know what I mean? Like things are different.
Huge problem.
This is a huge problem. Elvis Presley never existed. And like John Lennon never got killed, but he is a murderer himself. And like
Kurt Cobain was eaten by a dodo bird.
Exactly. And it's just so strange. Then the movie just ends like, but this isn't over. You know what I mean? And like, you just undercut your own script, I guess, for a joke, but it's really not a joke. It's a cameo, which isn't a punchline.
Yeah.
And it's not even a good cameo. Like it'd be George Clooney doesn't do anything. He's just like, "You're not Bruce Wayne." And then he's like, "You sure about that, kid?" or something dumb like that. And then the movie's like, "Ba-da, ba-da, ba-da," and I would go to credits and everybody leave. And it's like, I just don't understand the thematic through line of the film. If you're supposed to let go, then let him let go. There's a bunch of superfluous characters. The film like grinds to a halt for 15 minutes while they discuss whether or not Michael J. Fox or Eric Stoltz played in Back to the Future, because in the alternate timeline, it was Eric Stoltz. And he's talking to like all these random characters that I guess we're supposed to know, but I don't know them and I don't care about them. And it's just all kinds of confused is the best word for it. I can totally see why some people enjoy the film, though. If the humor works for you, the humor works for you. And if you really get a kick out of seeing Michael Keaton, then cool. And I guess, truth be told, like there's some element of like, oh, that would be a good story buried in there, but it's just not there yet. Like it needed a few more passes and somebody to say, look, it's cool that you want to do these cameos, but unless you can find a way to make them actually integrate with the plot, there's no reason for them. And it's just weird. Like I would have much preferred if Barry messing with the timeline there, the timeline's merging in on itself, and like Barry's there trying to fight the villain at the end, and like Grant Gustin is beside him, and John Wesley Shipp is beside him, and Christopher Reeve, and everybody, like they're all there, and they all start fighting then, right? Like this giant Justice League of the multiverse.
Right.
Okay. Like they're all fighting on the same team and they're doing things. But as it is, like most of these cameos, they just look at the camera and that's all they do. And that doesn't mean anything to me. But again, the big case in point is I have a hard time with Ezra Miller. I have a hard time with Ezra Miller as this character. I have a hard time with the humor. I have a hard time finding the good story that there is buried in here, but it's so far buried. And there's just a lot of really baffling choices that I think maybe worked on paper, but don't work in execution, can't work in execution. And the two last points that I'll go to that regard is one, there's this opening scene where Barry is, showcasing his abilities. And I think this would work in an animated film or in a comic book. Doesn't work in live action. There's a building that's falling, and the top floor of the building is a baby nursery. I guess this is a hospital. So the baby nursery is on the top floor, and the building starts to collapse, and all the babies fall out of the window, and they're just in free fall down to the ground. And so Barry has to run up while they're all like frozen in air and like save all the babies. But they're all really bad CG. And like really bad CG, and because, as he explains, he can't touch something in super speed, it'll kill them. So, which I guess scientifically is true, but one of those things you just have to let go when you're watching a Flash movie. The Speed Force protects them.
For God's sake.
That's all you have to do. That's what they do in the comics. The Speed Force protected them.
Oh my God.
But they don't. So Barry can't touch the babies. So he does like all these different things to like move the babies. And like one of them that everybody's talking about is there's a microwave falling, and he puts a baby in a microwave and moves the microwave through the air. And I'm like, I think either somebody thought this was really funny or whatever. Like maybe this works in a cartoon, but it like an Elmer Fudd cartoon, but it doesn't work here.
I don't think I could have fit any of my kids in a microwave.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I don't know.
Would your son have fit in a microwave?
The thought never crossed my mind, so it's hard to fathom that sentence.
I would never do
that. But my microwave is kind of small.
Yeah,
maybe this is a really big industrial microwave. But
my kids were pretty big when they were born.
But he literally puts the baby in the microwave, shuts the door, moves the microwave through the air, lines it up, and then like catches the microwave. And I'm like,
but wouldn't you destroy the micro? If you destroy the baby with your speed, won't you destroy the microwave?
But I'm also like, if you catch a microwave that's in free fall, even if you're no longer in super speed, the jostling of the catch.
Yeah,
baby's dead.
You didn't save that baby, bro.
No. And so it's just a series of baffling decisions. And then as if that's not enough, there's also a therapy dog in free fall as well. Okay. And it's this really bad CG dog with like his tongue hanging out and like,
great.
It's not good. So that's one of the 2 points. The last point I'll make, this is something I alluded to a minute ago when we were in the spoiler free section. Bruce does something that very, very un-Batman-like, which is Barry's doing all this with the babies, and Bruce's Batman is taking off after the villains, these like no-name thugs who've stolen something. It doesn't matter. And he's trying to catch them, but he fails. He's not a very good Batman. And he has to be saved himself by Wonder Woman. And so Gal Gadot shows up for a second, and you get the very annoying thing, which is every time she shows up, you have to see like 1 millimeter of her boot before you hear and I'm like, oh Lord. And as soon as the electric guitars hit, you're like, it's a Gal Gadot cameo.
Stop.
Oh Lord, here we go. And I probably just woke up my entire house. But it's literally, and I'm like, oh no. And so anyway, she pulls him up with the lasso of truth. And because the lasso of truth is around Bruce's hand, he's like smiling and like, how are you doing, Diana? And he's like in the Batman costume. And he's very much like, I dress up like a bat to avenge the death of my parents because I'm traumatized. And he's like, and this is like supposed to be really funny.
He says that?
Yeah, yes. Because apparently now the lasso of truth doesn't just make you tell the truth. It makes you tell the truth when you have no intention of talking. If that makes sense. As far as I understand, the lasso of truth doesn't make you talk. It makes you be honest when you talk. But that's not the way it's presented here. So like Batman is stuck in the lasso of truth. And he's like, oh, I can't seem to escape from this thing. And so Barry grabs it to try to help. And so Barry grabs it. And the first thing out of his mouth is like, I know that sex is a thing, but I've never had it. And and again, I'm like, I don't think the lasso of truth makes you talk. I think it just makes you be honest when you talk. So for all intents and purposes, the thing wrapped around Batman's hand, Batman would still be Batman and just be quiet and not be talking. Exactly. But if Wonder Woman asked him a question, he would give an honest answer.
Yeah, you would think that Batman has researched this thing and knows a fair amount about how it works, and certainly how to not fall prey to its
not this
powers.
Batman, because he can't even catch a common criminal. I mean, this isn't like Killer Croc, like that's like a physical threat. It's not Bane. It's just a dude.
He's just like he's the fastest kid alive. He's a freak. He's a freak.
Exactly.
Flash
so
shows
weird.
up. Where'd he go? It's just beer. It's just beer.
It's fine.
It's just beer. It's just beer.
Don't worry. And then Wonder Woman just kind of like grabs the lasso, smiles, and and flies away. And like that's it. And I'm like, that's the extent of Gal Gadot's role in this film.
Bye.
Good Lord. And Ben Affleck did that terrible performance, and then they have to let the joke like linger, because then Barry is like, do you think she thought the sex thing was a metaphor? Because it was clearly a metaphor, Bruce. It's clearly a metaphor. And I'm like, stop it. The punchline's over, and it's not even a good joke.
Yeah.
But then like that, this is all case in point of the film doesn't understand these characters. Batman, that does not sound anything like Batman. That not only the not catching the common criminal, not knowing what the lasso of truth does, none of that like feels like Batman to me. And then they reduce Batman to just a joke. And then the post-credit scene of the film is Barry leaving a bar with Aquaman. And so Jason Momoa is like drunk. And Barry, of course, I guess can't get drunk because his metabolism's too fast. But like, Arthur's drunk, and he's like, I just go to your house and sleep for the night. And it's, this thing is bad drunk acting. And then, again, I'm not even going to fault Jason Momoa. It's written this way. And then he falls into a puddle and like face first into a puddle because he's so drunk. And Barry's like, come on, Arthur, my apartment's right here or whatever. And Arthur's like, this is my home. The water is my home. And like stays face down in the water puddle. And that's the post-credit scene. And I'm like, these characters aren't jokes.
No, yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. Marvel, say what you will about Marvel's jokes, but the characters are rarely the joke.
Right.
The characters are quippy. The characters point out jokey things or like find the humor in a situation, or somebody gets hit and it's a bit of physical comedy, but the characters themselves are not treated as if they are jokes.
Yeah.
And in this film, both Batman and Aquaman are treated as if they are a joke. And that to me is a tragedy of this film and of the DCEU in general. These characters are not punchlines.
Yeah.
They should be treated with respect, and they aren't. And there you have it. So that's why all that is the reason why I give this 1.5 star. I really didn't expect to talk this long about it, but things just kept coming to me about like, I hate this. I hate this too. but the characters are treated as jokes and the CGI is awful. And the things that are in the film, like the babies, should exist in animation only. And where Tara Strong is voicing all the babies, that's fine. I could totally see that in an animated series. Not here. And then like, yeah, it's just a mess. It's just a mess. So for a movie that's been, to put perspective in this, I read Ezra Miller was cast as Barry Allen the same month that the first episode of the Flash CW show aired.
Really?
Yes. So it's taken that long. The Flash on TV has had 9 seasons come and go. The entire series come and go before Ezra got to play Barry in his own film. So they certainly had the time to tell the best superhero story ever written.
Didn't happen. I'm perplexed and interested, and in all, it's like watching a big train wreck of this whole, of just what's happened to the DCEU and how it's just been ruined by, lack of direction, lack of vision, lack of consistency. Just DC's Warner Brothers has been all over the place. Like, a few years back, they're like, they pretty much said like, well, since we have poor continuity and we haven't cared about continuity in the past, we're going to like intentionally not have continuity. And then everyone's like, okay, that's dumb. And it just hasn't panned out. And there people are freaking out because there's like set photos of this new Joker movie. And I'm just like, I don't really care about that. I don't have any interest in seeing this, like, because to me, like, these sorts of stories, like, I like when they are, I like the Marvel model. I like when they interweave and relate, and I like when their stories themselves are standalone. But I like, if we're going to adapt a comic book, it seems like the best way to do that is to have a larger ensemble that relate, because that is most closely mirrors what's fun about the original medium. I want to read something here I found on Wikipedia about revisions to the film's ending, because it contains just a little bit of this cluster that happened here. Here. Okay, so the ending for the film, which features George Clooney reprising his role as an alternate Bruce Wayne due to Barry's actions, changed multiple times during post-production due to the constant change of leadership at Warner Brothers. In 2022, the original ending shot for the film, conceived by then heads of DC Films, Toby Emmerich and Walter Hamada, would have had Keaton's Batman. Did you know any of this?
Yes, I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, it would have had Keaton's Batman as well as Callie's Supergirl continue existing in the new timeline, but erase Cavill and Affleck's roles of Superman and Batman, respectively, from the DCEU continuity, with plans for a sequel to The Flash before building up to a Crisis on Infinite Earths film in the future, despite the CW already having done its adaptation of the comic in the 2019-2020, which included the DCEU in its continuity. Because wasn't Aquaman in that? And weren't there characters from... No, Ezra Miller was in that.
Ezra Miller was in that on the CW, yeah.
Right. This reportedly was to set up the then in development Batgirl film before it was canceled in August of that year, as Keaton was set to reprise his role of Batman in that film.
Yep.
Then after the merger of Warner Media and Discovery Inc. in 2022 and the removal of Emmerich and Hamada, executives Michael DeLuca and Pamela Abdy took over and decided to keep Cavill within the continuity and reshot the ending. Cavill shot his part for this ending along with his cameo for Black Adam in September, Godot was also filmed a scene for this ending. This was intended to drum up interest for the planned Man of Steel sequel and third Wonder Woman film before both were canceled. In November, James Gunn and Peter Safran became the new heads of now DC Studios and planned to completely reboot the franchise under a new name, the DC Universe. As a result, Cavill no longer was expected to reprise his role, and the scene was cut, while the ending was again reworked without Callie, Keaton, and Cavill's characters. And the final ending with Clooney and Miller was shot in January 2023, which was kept under wraps until the film's premiere in June. Jesus.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I also heard that based on the receipts for this film, how well it did at the box office, they were looking to do a Batman Beyond film. And this was revealed by Kevin Smith, who had insider knowledge on his podcast. He said the idea was Keaton would do, now that Batgirl was canceled, they were going to do Batman Beyond. But obviously, I'll paraphrase Kevin Smith here, but Kevin Smith said, yeah, that ain't happening now.
Yeah, no. And this goes to my point, which is, I don't know that this, I mean, so if you told me the film's great, it's worth seeing, then I'd be like, okay, cool. Like I'll check out the movie. But other than the quality of the film itself, there's no utility in seeing this film because it's not going to continue. Right. Like what is awkward, and I'm sure anyone who follows this at all realizes this and has realized this for years, but if you're going to reboot the franchise, it's James Gunn and Peter Safran are in a weird place where they have to hype up these movies without, and at the same time, not give people hope. Like these characters are not going to continue. Like we're not going to have Ezra Miller as the Flash again. We're not going to have Arthur Curry played by Jason Momoa. And we've got this Blue Beetle project, but whatever. I don't know. Like basically by the end of 2023, the old DCEU is dead. And we are now looking to the future with James Gunn's Superman film and not Matt Reeves Batman or Matt Reeves Batman, but not in the universe. And it's just like, y'all need to figure out what you're doing. What are you doing?
It's a really hard position to be in. I don't envy James Gunn and the decisions he has to make, because you're right. He walked into something where he's expected to prop up these films that he had no involvement in. And at the same time, he has to then drum up excitement for the films he is involved in. But the very nature of that is that you almost can't do both at the same time. So I don't envy that position at all. I think from a writing perspective, if I had approached The Flash and Aquaman as the last two films of the DCEU, I think the way that I would have done that is just said, okay, look, we're going to hold The Flash. Let's release Aquaman when it's ready. Right. And do The Flash last. Yep. And let whatever last scene we do of The Flash be a bookend to this entire DCEU. Yep. And The Flash comes back from the past and you have whatever Batman we want, whatever Superman we want, whatever, but they're all there. They all come together. So we'll need Cavill and Affleck and whoever all together in one final shot. They're all together. And the idea being they will continue in this universe. We just won't watch this universe anymore. Yep. And like the camera kind of pulls out and goes to one of those other worlds that we saw in that climax, and then we don't see anything in it. We just kind of go into that world and boom, now everything we're about to see is in this new world.
Go into the world, there's a cornfield in Kansas and you can see like what looks like a comet in the sky, and then we just cut to black.
There you go.
There's Superman's
That's all
pod.
You need.
And that's it.
That's all you need. Yep. Done.
Yeah.
You see the little like Smallville population, whatever sign, like welcome to Smallville.
So someone should say, look up in the sky. Cut. Yep. That's it.
Done. Yep.
That's that's all it would have taken. And it was the perfect, like if there's ever any of these films that would have been a perfect excuse to say like, here is a reason that this film can continue to exist, but also feed the reboot. And everyone involved knows that. And it's a big goodbye. And it's a goodbye that they didn't get, with Justice League and then boom, like,
and that's it.
Yeah, that's it. And then if you're James Gunn, like, you know, and it could be at the front, like everyone knows, like the beginning of the press, like this movie is going to reboot the franchise. We all know this is coming, but we don't know how or why. And we get to see all these characters give a farewell.
Exactly. And you get to prop it up not as like, this is the greatest film ever made.
Yeah.
You get to prop it up instead as, this is the last film of the DCEU. So if you're a fan of this film, please come out, or this franchise, please come support it. We do think it's a good movie, and we think it'll satisfy you as, you know, as we move forward into something else. It'll satisfy the fans of what came before, and boom, there you go.
That is the thing that should have been done.
And if you hold the flash long enough, then you can announce the casting of your new Superman in that film.
Exactly.
If you wanted to.
Yeah.
And you don't cut to the cornfields and the thing. You cut to the cornfields and Clark coming out of the cornfields, or like leaping over the cornfields and landing in frame or something. And like, boom, there you go. There's our new Superman. Cut to, boom, 3 months later, or 6 months, 12 months, whatever, Superman Legacy comes out. And now we're in our new world, and boom, off to the races. Yeah. And that's what should have been done. But unfortunately, I think at that point, it sounds like to me, we've already put enough money into this thing. The idea of pouring enough money to get Cavill and Affleck and Gatto and Momoa and everybody back again.
Yep.
And obviously not Cyborg, but we're getting everybody else back. Then like, that's a huge expense. Yeah. And is it worth it? And I would argue, because it's a good look.
It's a good, exactly. It is a good look. But if you're David Zaslav and you're like, no, I'm slashing costs left and right.
Yeah.
There's no way you're ponying up for all those salaries.
We're done with this world. Why are we still propping it up at all?
Why am I spending money on this?
Yeah, exactly.
Why should I spend money on something that doesn't make money back?
And then you just say, because it's good for the fans. Yeah. And then he goes, I don't care.
Who? Who? The fans.
The what? Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. Right.
Yep. Oh, our customers. Oh, sorry. You didn't say the right word.
Yes.
Customers. Our customers. The only thing that he would understand is if you said it's good PR, Mr. Zaslav.
It's good PR. And it is. But unfortunately, even had they made that change, the film's still a mess.
Your shit's still weak, buddy.
It just would have ended with less of a sour taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been like, oh, George Clooney, cool. I hated that movie.
Nipples.
I don't know why, but I'm just thinking about nipples now.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's a good way to go out as any. Nipples.
Yeah, nipples.
Nipples. Oh, my nipples. I've been thinking about that line so much because I've been running and I've got some terrible nipple chafing. Oh yeah, seriously, from my shirt because am I making and they're making you hurt? If I'm mentioning this,
no.
It's like especially like I sweat a lot, so like the shirt gets like real heavy, and it's just I'm running for like an hour, an hour and a half. And Dustin, I'm doing some body horror here. I'd be like in the shower, and I look down at the washcloth, and there's blood on it.
Oh my gosh,
nipple blood.
It's Andy Bernard, dude.
Exactly. And it's unsightly, and I'm disturbed.
Well, and now our listeners are all disturbed as well. Good night, everybody.
Goodbye.
Go to bed trying to sleep thinking about Hooper's bloody nipples.
Make sure you tape up those nipples. Tape up those nips. Good night.
Also, what a slap in the face. Ezra Miller comes on CW and they don't even let Grant Gustin come into the big screen. Oh, come on.
Yeah. They did it. They did him dirty.
I did hear they filmed something. They just cut it. Which is almost even worse.
That's the thing. Like I'm reading that thing about the film's ending. It's like, you shot all this stuff. And it's like, no, now we're doing this. Come back in and shoot it. Oh, now we're doing this. You're out. Oh, now we're doing this. You're back in. Get in here. Now let's film a new thing. It's just like, God, just for God's sake. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
All right.
All right, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.